Welcome everyone to your winter outlook for Southwest Lower Michigan. My name is Brandon Hoving and I'm a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Grand Rapids. And with me is Bill Marino as well, meteorologist here at the Weather Service. And we'll be covering our expectations for this upcoming winter across Southwest Lower Michigan. To summarize up front, looking at the temperature pattern this winter, there are equal chances for above, near, or below normal temperatures across the region. In other words, the forecast is uncertain as far as the temperature pattern goes across the Great Lakes. But we'll share some more information here momentarily that'll tell you kind of where we're expecting those higher odds for colder than normal temperatures across the U.S. and how that may impact Michigan moving forward. In terms of precipitation across the region, the odds do favor above normal precipitation across Southwest Lower Michigan. And if you're near and west of US 131, well, you've got a higher likelihood of experiencing above normal snowfall. So what goes into the winter forecast for us? Well, there's a lot of things we look at. We're not going to cover all of these in the briefing today, but we do look at something called ENSO, and that is the El Nino Southern Oscillation. Basically looking at the temperature pattern across the Pacific Ocean near the equator. We look at whether we're expecting the El Nino pattern or La Nina to materialize or neither. We do look at some climate forecast models to see what they're showing. We also look at past winters that had a similar setup to what we're expecting this winter. That's called analog forecasting. We'll take a look at a few of those things here coming up shortly. And also the teleconnection patterns across the globe. A lot of things that we look at across the global scale, which we won't be getting into in this briefing, but we do look at quite a bit of data. So looking at the temperature probabilities for this upcoming winter, we've got kind of 3-month sequences here on the screen, and really what it's showing you as we progress through the winter, we do look at some enhanced probabilities for colder than normal temperatures to show up across the north central U.S. and the Great Lakes region. And that tries to inch toward the state of Michigan as we get toward the latter half of the winter. So we may end up seeing some of the more persistent cold weather start to push into the Great Lakes, especially mid to late winter. Not saying we can't get cold earlier than that, but that's how the odds are looking at this point. And then for precipitation, it looks like the odds are favoring a wet winter across the area, so that means rain, that also means snow and any other frozen precipitation. So especially once we get into December and beyond, that's when the probabilities do go up across the region. So are we expecting an El Nino this winter, or a La Nina, or neutral? And for more information on that, here's Bill Marino.
First, we're going to look at what's currently going on. And if you look at the global sea surface temperature anomalies, this was taken the end of October. You'll notice most of the northern hemisphere has warmer than normal temperatures with few exceptions, while the southern oceans are, for the most part, colder than normal. What's important, especially for Michigan, is the water temperature anomalies across the eastern part of the North Pacific, which you'll notice is much warmer than normal. Going forward, using the climate model forecast for how the sea surface temperature is going to develop over the winter, you'll notice that the much above normal temperature pattern remains across the eastern Pacific. And actually, the cooler than normal conditions over the southern oceans do moderate slightly, but it still doesn't become warmer than normal. So we do expect ENSO neutral this coming winter. And looking at the CPC IRI official probabilistic ENSO forecast for El Nino 3.4, you can notice the gray, which is the forecast for ENSO neutral, has the highest probability all the way in through the summer. So ENSO neutral is clearly favored. there's a slightly higher chance for an El Nino than a La Nina. So if it wasn't going to be ENSO neutral, it would seem like there's a slightly enhanced chance of an El Nino, but at this point we are going with ENSO neutral. Okay, so here's a very interesting thing. If you'll remember the charts we just showed you, looking at the 10 coldest winters since 1950 over southwest Michigan, you'll notice that there's warmer than normal water temperatures over the eastern part of the North Pacific Ocean, and there's cooler than normal water temperatures from the equator south over the eastern and central Pacific. And that is strikingly similar to what's going on now, by the way. And so you can see that the classical pattern for the top 10 coldest winters shows pretty much cold over most of the central and eastern United States. The precipitation anomaly, by the way, is interesting. It shows at the center of the cold is actually drier than normal, and toward the edge, which is over the east coast, it's slightly enhanced. That's because that's where the storm track is. Now looking at the top 10 warmest winters, you'll notice it's basically the opposite of that. We have cool water over the eastern North Pacific, and the classic strong El Nino pattern with the really warm water over the eastern tropical Pacific is very apparent. And in that particular scenario, clearly the same places that were cold with the opposite effect are now warm, but no precipitation anomaly. It's essentially near normal across most of the country. Only above normal precipitation is along the west coast and over the southern United States. Now, as for snowfall, and this shouldn't be tremendously surprising, we expect the locations near and west of US 131 to receive above normal snowfall, and locations inland of US 131 to receive below normal snowfall. The numbers on your screen are the analog average for the 10 analog years that represent ENSO neutral conditions in southwest Michigan since 1950. In summary, we do expect that there's an equal chance for above, near, or below normal temperatures during this coming winter, but as you can tell from the slides we presented, the odds tend to favor cooler than normal as we get later in the winter. Looking at the precipitation, as we said, it looks like above normal precipitation is favored for southwest Michigan. And it's interesting to point out that in the last 15 years, 11 have had wetter than normal winters, and only 2 have had drier than normal winters. So both the trend and our model forecast and our analogs support the idea of a wet winter. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great winter.